um, it's really important that you understand that we've built and run PMOs, right? So that's always the most exciting thing. Um, for me, I would say I want to make sure that we understand what you're hoping to get out of this webinar today. So I want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity real quick, while I'm kind of explaining who Kolme is and what we do, why don't you chat into us? Why don't you let us know what you're hoping to get out of today's time with us? We want to make sure that not only are we teaching you, but we're listening, and that we're making sure that we're hitting all of those points for you if possible. Okay, so go ahead and chat into us and let us know that. So like I said, Kolme, we've built and run PMOs. We've managed programs and portfolios in the tens of millions, and we've delivered the biggest and most complex projects imaginable for our clients. And now we're ready to help you explore deeper topics within the project management world, right? Our world is changing, and it's changing quickly. So we want to make sure that not only do you know that we're here, but that we're feeling it too, right? So we really wanted to come from a servant style leadership and just really help make sure that everybody understands some of those big levers we can pull while working from home to make sure not only our teams are successful, but that our projects are as well. Okay. Most importantly, guys, each of the Kolme partners, i.e. Kim, right, has over 20 years of international project and program management experience. And they've had a hand in selecting industry professionals to join their team of industry leaders. Myself, no, just kidding. So Kolme Group is really backed by really amazing qualified individuals. So we're excited to not only sponsor, but to partner with this group. And for that, Kim, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to you and Kate to get this started so we can start educating on how to manage this new world we're in, right?
Oh, we're unmuted. Look out.
Uh-oh.
Thanks for the great intro there, Lauren.
Sure.
Kate, are you on?
I'm here.
Hey, Kate. And hey, everybody, thanks for joining our podcast today. Well, it's a webinar and a podcast, I guess, both.
This is like a version of a live show, but it's live on the internet. Like in the time of Corona, this is our live show.
Yes. So if you don't happen to be familiar with PM Happy Hour, we've got a podcast, Kate and I. And our podcast, we say, is the place for frank and honest discussion about real world issues in project management. It gets salty sometimes. We try not to take ourselves too seriously, even though it can be a pretty serious job sometimes. So let's get started. So I am Kim Messendrup. I'm a project manager, consultant, and trainer, and I've made all the mistakes that we're going to try to help you avoid today. And with me, as always, on our podcast is the one and the only, the absolutely amazing Kate Anderson. Hey, Kate.
Hey, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. And where in the world are you today?
I would call this my house. I believe a lot of our listeners are in their house. We are all jointly sharing the location of our house today.
Yes, we're all in the same place at home.
Yeah. How's your house, Kim?
It's good. I work from home anyway, so I'm kind of pretty used to working from here.
Nice.
Although it's a lot more crowded now. My kids are all home. So.
That is, we'll talk a little bit about that today.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, let's just jump in. So, working from home used to be kind of a cool perk. And now suddenly for a lot of people, it's not so optional. It's kind of a new reality that we're in. And for a lot of people, this is a new thing and maybe even a pretty tough adjustment.
Yeah, I know this is a big change, but having come from that work from home background, I am very excited for how this will create more empathy and better habits for people who've been working from home for years. I think that people who've worked from home have felt maybe lonely in the past. And now that we're all trying it out, I'm excited to see how this changes us in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I've been running projects primarily from home for the nearly 10 years, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's great.
Yeah, I was working from home before this program that I'm in. I was in my house in Chicago for 3 years and I loved it. I was very effective without being in the room. I've facilitated planning sessions, design and architecture sessions, and negotiated tough conversations. Like you name the conversation, I have had it from my office at home.
Um, Corey, who was just on our show, just did our AdCar episode, if you've heard that podcast on AdCar. So Corey was actually due to fly out and spend last week in Seattle delivering a full week of training. But at the very last minute, their customer canceled the trip and requested that she deliver an entire week of technical training all remotely. So she had to quickly pivot. And they had kind of your typical stumblings the very first morning. Is everybody on Zoom or is everybody connected? Can you hear me and all that stuff? And what Corey did was she focused very hard on engagement, games, driving questions, and she thought about not just converting the format to online, but keep engagement. And it worked great for her. She got rave reviews from the customer. It turned out to be an amazing week, and the customer just kept raving about it. So if you do it right, it can be really great.
Yeah. And having met and known Corey for a while, of course, that was successful. I'm thrilled.
Exactly.
I am not surprised, but I am thrilled to hear that it went well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, and working remote has been a growing movement for a long time. In fact, my Kolme is completely virtual. So I'm curious to see if this current situation does push a lot of organizations over that edge, and we're going to see a dramatic uptick in remote workers after this, because I think everybody, like you said, who's going to be on the edge, they're saying, this thing actually works pretty well. It feels like the technology and the infrastructure to do it is finally really getting a place where it's really feasible, even though they've been talking about, remote working and conferencing for, back since the 90s. It's just now really getting acceptance. It seems like it's kind of hit that tipping point.
I truly hope so. I enjoy a decreased commute time. It gives you more time to spend on the things that you love to do with the people that you love. A little cheesy, it's better for the environment. I do hope that this pans out well for the future, at least as an option, a more consistent option.
Yeah. And who doesn't like to work in their pajamas? Come on, honestly.
Business on the top, pajamas on the bottom. Let's be real.
Yes. I turn my camera off before I get up so you don't see the pajama bottoms. They're Doctor Who, by the way. So today, let's talk about a few survival tips for running projects or teams. If you're not a project manager, you may still having to work with teams remotely, and whether this is something you've actually been doing for a while, and maybe you're looking for some tips to help yourself with that, or help your team members who are suddenly new, or if this whole situation is suddenly thrust upon you and your team for the first time.
Yeah. And I want to talk about what I think is actually the most important thing to get started with because of this time of uncertainty and such abrupt change. The first thing that I feel like you need to do at home is communicate boundaries with those you live with. Everybody is dealing with this adjustment. I have talked to so many coworkers who are dealing with children who are confused as to why the parent that is normally able to play with me all the time when they're in front of me is not able to do that. My wife and I, while we love each other, don't have any children to deal with. The issue of space inside our house, right? That's something that we deal with as well. So this needs to be a conversation that you have together as if you are moving into an office together, right? Like, how are we going to create our work schedule or our existence schedule as a family or home together? The first thing I would put on that list is, what are we going to do about kids and dogs? Is there a way to create a schedule for kids, right? I know for young kids, they can look at, how are you going to handle nap time? What if you took the AM shift and I took the PM shift? See if there's a way to trade things off while you're at work. And the other thing I'll say about having a dog at home is, if you're new to having a dog at home, this is going to be an adjustment for them, but it is possible for them to learn that whenever you're at the computer, it's not time to talk. My dog has learned in the past week that when I say, thanks everybody, bye, he bolts over to me and like slams into my leg. Like, well, that is the cue for now it's time to play, which for me is good. That's a time that I can get up. But it is possible for those to adjust as long as you don't reward them whenever they are coming up to you mid-meeting.
Oh, that's a good tip. Yeah. Another one that we have in my house is background noise. Uh, everybody's got to have different stimulus to work well. You should agree on what things that you'll need to do that, such as like if music on the TV or if you like to wear headphones or whatever. I've got a family of 5. All of them are home right now. And also they just released the new version of Doom. And so there's rip and tear. I had to go in and say, okay, guys, headphones on for rip and tear for the next 2 hours. So it's I like the way Kate said it. You got to sit down and have a conversation and say, look, kind of in a tough situation. Can you work with me on this? Let's kind of set some boundaries and say, between these times, can you go headphones in or go to, kind of go to your room or go sit somewhere else, put your headphones in. And then, we'll come out and talk when I have my lunch or something like that.
Yeah. And that to me also speaks to thinking time, right? Sometimes when you're at home, I like the dog training tips. Those PM happy hour, best combo ever. Thank you. I'm here to help you with dog training tips. I can't help you with children. I'm so sorry, but I'm here for your dogs. But to the note of thinking time, something that my wife and I, we don't struggle, but we're still working through how this works, right? There's times when you're sitting at your laptop and you are zoned out, scrolling through the Facebook because your brain needs a break. There's other times when you're sitting at your laptop and you are really thinking through, how am I going to message this? How am I going to keep these people engaged? And from an outsider's perspective, there is no difference in the way those two things look, especially if they're not sitting behind you staring at your screen. Yeah. So working on a way to, like on a phrase or a way to communicate or agree, right? Like, hey, I can't talk right now, and understand that that's not something that's personal, right? Like you just need a way to say like, I'm in work, like, sorry, I'm in work mode, and so that you can keep that flow going. If you are working with other adults in your house or, teaching kids about those boundaries, a definite thing to consider.
Yeah. And that just really helps with the stress, right? Because if your partner or other people at home don't understand what you're doing and they just want to come and chat, and you are trying to get your work done, you might already be stressed out from changing the situation, but now you have to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. And if they get upset about it, now that stresses you out in addition to the fact that you've got work. And so really it's worth a little conversation to set a little bit of boundaries.
Yeah.
Looking at the chat, I see Drew actually had a great tip on here. He says, internet usage is also an important boundary because not everybody's got a super fat gigabit pipe. And if you're trying to have a video conference and you've got 3 other people streaming Netflix, that can be tough.
Yeah. And something that I do with my wife is I'll let her know my meeting chunks for the day, right? I have meetings from 9 a.m. to 1:30, and then I'm free in the afternoon. We could go on a dog walk then. We could talk about, this thing that you're thinking through for your job then, right? Just sharing schedule stuff is a nice thing to do. Ooh, I like the big whiteboard idea. That is so good. I love that. Somebody in chat is sharing, we set a family schedule last night and posted it on a big whiteboard. Kids have everything mapped out and know what mom is working on. Kristen McKee shared that. Thank you, Kristen. That's nice, so Kristen. Good.
Good one. All right. Shall we talk about environment now, Kate?
Yes, please.
And also keep this cool stuff coming in the chat. This is pretty cool. We're not used to doing this on a podcast, getting this cool interaction in real time. It's pretty
super fun.
All right, let's talk about environment. So one of the first things that you need to do after you set your personal boundaries is set up your space.
Oh yeah. You need to have a clear physical boundary between work and home. And I know that we're all working from home, and so that feels strange. My office did something where I could go in and take home my work monitor from my office. I don't know what your company is doing. That's something to see. Running into the office and grabbing a monitor and leaving should be a pretty low social distance exercise. If you are fortunate enough to have monitors at home, it is very important that you create a space that is not that is only for work, and you can get up and go there in the morning, and then you can go there and leave. And right now for me, that's my work monitor on my kitchen table is where that workspace is.
Yeah. And if not everybody can swing it, but kind of the obvious thing is really set up a quiet workspace where you can focus. If you can find a corner, no kids, no roommates, nothing, that's important. It's good to have it be a separate workspace from your daily space. So it can be really hard. A lot of people find it hard to work like in the living room, even if you don't have other people around, because it's not the workspace. This is the place where I go to relax, and to sit here and try to do work from here, it can be really tough. And so whether you kind of say, while I'm working from home, the dining room table, that is my office. Or, if you're fortunate enough to have a home office, great, or a desk in your bedroom, whatever it is, but try to have at least some kind of mental place where you say, this is where my wall, physical or virtual, is. When I go into this space, this is where I work. And when I leave and I shut the door, or I'm not sitting in that chair, I'm not working. And that can really help you draw that border, because if you're really into your job, what can happen is that line starts to blur progressively more and more, and you're never really off work, and you're never really at work, or it just gets blurry, and it just makes things stressful, and just makes you tired to be home. And that little act of creating a separate physical barrier or virtual barrier, whatever it is, can really help you a lot with that.
Yeah. And I do want to be sensitive to this time, right? There are people who were never planning on working from home who currently have to do that. So even if your space is tiny, it is important to find a space that will be your workspace. Maybe it's a particular chair that you use. Maybe it's a particular, maybe you draw a curtain around yourself for the day. Cause I know that not everybody planned on having this. My current house is a 1-bedroom. When I was working from home, I had a 2-bedroom, and the 2nd bedroom was my office. So even in this time of uncertainty, definitely try to see if you can carve off just a tiny space for you to be.
One more tip there is one of my favorite things, especially if is these can be a great barrier. So when my headphones are on, they're plugged in, whether I'm on a conference call or listening to background music or just on the muffle the world, this can be a nice virtual wall around your workspace, your headphones.
Yeah. Some of the other things that I'm seeing in chat, background during video can be a distraction. Talking about blurring your background. I know Teams has a blur your background feature. I assume if Microsoft has it, that perhaps they found that after other companies did that. So blur your background is an option. I do think in this time of uncertainty, it is very interesting to meet my coworkers and kind of see some of what goes on at home. And I've met a lot more kids than I ever would have met at work. So I would also ask, having empathy for those who, they just can't get away from a needy 3-year-old, or, they don't have the help at home to keep somebody occupied. Both parents are working. Have empathy if somebody shows up with background noise, and just have a little more patience, because everybody is dealing with this. So these will not be your most perfect, knocked it out of the park meetings. Like, there's definitely going to be some new challenges here.
Yeah, I know Zoom, I don't know if it has a blur the background, but Zoom has a virtual background feature. And I've started to see some organizations get competitive with fun and cool backgrounds, which I guess it could be distracting, but at this point, everybody's trying to settle in, and so they're trying to figure it out. So I've seen some pretty cool Zoom backdrops as well.
Yeah.
And so now, while most of us are kind of stuck at home doing this, if you are somebody who's going to be working home long term, sometimes it can be nice to change scenery a little bit. In normal times, it might be nice to go work an afternoon from a coffee shop or a co-location. If you are a long time working from home, just because it can be, it's kind of like a treat to give yourself. Right now, maybe not so much, but you can maybe give that to yourself by sitting on the patio some morning and have coffee while you check your email or something like that.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say, I love our ergonomic graphic, is that you do need to consider your posture at home. I think for some folks who only occasionally work from home, this is I'll sit with my laptop on my lap, but you'll just slowly, for the visual, right, just become a hunched baby who's not able to focus, and you'll feel uncomfortable, way more uncomfortable than if you were at work, quote unquote. So a good chair is one where you have the back support that you need, your hips are slightly above your knees, and your feet are both able to touch the ground. Ideally for your monitor, I believe they want your nose in the center of your monitor. I have my camera at about eye level for here. And so that's just things to consider as you are setting up a place for you to work. You want to try to avoid the hunch and the stare down.
Yeah, it's actually, that takes us to our next slide. I'm talking about, local hardware. Oh, we are on that slide. Sorry. I'm not used to having slides doing a podcast, Kate.
It's okay. This is a technical difficulty of our live show.
And what you just said, ergonomics can be challenging right now, because if you're stuck at home, you're not used to it for all day, every day. and you just have the laptop, ergonomically, that's really not the greatest because the monitor is connected to the keyboard, which is down here. So if it's in the right place for your wrist, your head is pointed down. If it's in the right place for your eyes, your wrists are up here. And so you can start to have some problems. So think about getting, first of all, make sure you give yourself some break to, wiggle up, stretch, walk around. But if you have the ability, think about getting that external mouse or external keyboard. If you are on a laptop, it can really help your comfort. And another thing that can really help with that is if you are on the laptop and you have a PDA of some kind, like if you got an iPad or even what do you call those? The Kindles, things like that. There are a lot of apps that let you connect that into your laptop, and you can use an application to use it as an external monitor.
Ooh.
And that can be a really nice trick, especially if you're used to a lot of screen space. You've got your 4-monitor setup at work, but you come home and you've got your little 13-inch monitor. That little extra bit of screen space can really help. Plus, you can put it up into maybe an easier place to read. So maybe check out that idea of if you've got a PDA, check it out. Even I've got an iPad version 2, and I still use that as an external monitor, and it works great. So look into apps. They're usually cheap or free, and you just plug it in and maybe sync. So that can be a nice little trick.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why we're spending so much time talking about your setup, some folks have talked about in the chat how they're hoping to be able to connect, provide a sense of calm to their teams during this time. And in order to do that, that starts with you, right? In order for us to be able to communicate, this is a time where things are uncertain, but I'm a person you can lean on, or I understand this is hard. It's hard for me too. You have to feel like you're in a place where you can provide that leadership from. So we're talking here about it sounds like a tips and tricks list, but it really does the trick to get you in a mental space where you are available to support your team. This isn't just a list of it's time to go place a giant Amazon order and buy all the things. It's whatever works for you from this list to make you feel like you have a sense of normalcy and that you are in a physically healthy and supported place is what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So a couple of the things that can really help with your home office, of course, is having solid internet, especially if you're going to be there long term. It's good. It's a good investment. If you don't have it right now, I don't know, maybe talk to your provider if you're interested and see if you can get that bumped up. Maybe your company will help pay for that. And the reason I point that out is because there's nothing more frustrating than trying to have a conference call or a video call and have the internet drop or have everything glitch out, and you're trying to talk. It's hard enough if people aren't used to this amount of conference calls and communicating this way. But if you're trying to talk to somebody and you keep dropping out or they keep dropping out, it is infuriating.
Yeah, I do agree. And it's so funny. We're balancing this between ideal times and what we're currently in. Yeah. So ideal times, definitely consider higher bandwidth for your home. For now, I would say make sure there's a dial-in for folks if they have crappy internet with where they are. I know that all around the world, we're seeing spikes in internet usage. So lots of empathy. I'm going to repeat that word a lot today. But I do think it's important to think about, how we can be effective and also kind to situation folks are in. We just don't know what somebody's going through right now. So we want to make sure that we give them the options to work with us. And I would say if somebody can't hear you, leverage chat. The Teams has a chat function. If you don't have Teams in your whatever video conferencing you're doing, you can use your Slack or Skype or whatever you're using for chat outside of your video conferencing in order to make sure that you're keeping that communication going.
Yeah. And
do you want to jump
just
down?
Looking at some of the chats. Yeah. And this may be, we're going to talk more about video here in a moment, but video is great. Sometimes you might have to say video off for bandwidth reasons, but if you can at all do it, it's amazing. It really helps a lot.
Yeah. I think we should jump to collaboration tools.
Okay. But before that,
I'm ready.
While we're talking about meetings and typing, this is a great opportunity to really sharpen up your meeting management skills. And so writing good notes after your meeting and really documenting it and say, hey, these are the things we agreed to, can be really good to solidify if you've got dodgy phone calls. And what can also really, really help people is if you've got presentations or documents that you're going to talk about or review in a meeting, email those ahead of time. Don't rely on screen sharing.
Mhm.
because not everybody's got that capability, or it's not, maybe they're having problems with it right now. So get the documents out ahead of time so they can look at it locally, and then have good follow-up. So really sharpen up your meeting management skills.
Yeah. And I do think it's important when you're collaborating to share whatever it is that you're working on.
Mhm.
We haven't figured out all of the nuances of Teams yet at my office. The other day, somebody drew on their iPad and then showed that to us because that's what they could do. I pulled up Paint to draw something I was trying to communicate, because normally we'd be in a conference room. So don't be afraid to go low tech with a quote unquote crappy, unscalable solutions when that's not what you need for that moment, right? If you need, Teams does have a whiteboard. I hear you, Kristen. That is correct. I don't know why it's not enabled in my Teams. It does not exist where I looked for it. So instead, I brought up Paint because that was what I had available. So don't shy away from the not great options while we're all in a time of change.
Yeah, I do something like whiteboarding a lot of times when I'm trying to talk through a technical subject. Is I'll pull up actually an Excel spreadsheet, because a lot of times it's numbers based. And so I'll start kind of sketching things out, saying, well, here's these numbers, or here are these people and how they relate to this. So yeah, some kind of whiteboarding ad hoc like that can really do a lot to help you communicate. Do we want to jump to collaboration now?
Yes, please.
By the way, for all of our attendees, if you thought this webinar was going to end on time, it's not.
Normally we have an editor who keeps us less verbose. We're so sorry.
There's no one here to control us. We're just going to go.
Yeah, we're all on lockdown anyway, right? What are we going to
Yeah,
do?
where are you going to go? You're stuck with us. All right, Kate, roll.
Yeah, let's talk about some collaboration tools that can help you work remotely. The cool part is that if you don't have these already, you can get them set up fairly quickly. First up, I'm going to talk about IM tools. One thing I am personally excited to see how this changes. I work with people who treat IM tools very differently. And some people treat IM as like, oh, it's time to write you a novel. And I can't tell if it's generational or just like different habits or preferences, but I look forward to seeing IM turn into actual conversations and not emails with some people I work with. So IM is something for quick chatting back and forth. It doesn't have to be like a formal written document. I hope that we see that behavior continue, because that will help you stay in touch with people for something that you'd like an answer on soon, but not necessarily immediately. Like, oh, I need you to think about this today. Could you, like that's something I want to talk about later. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, right? So an IM tool like Skype, Slack, Teams, Google Hangouts, all those are great. Oh, yes. And Lauren, GIFs in Slack, yes, they are a savior in this time of difficult times. Yes, send us I wish we had GIFs in here so you could send us your best GIFs.
We actually had that this morning. One of the partners says, hey, we want to see everybody's funniest GIFs on the virus today. And it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
It was a good exercise. And on those tools, most organizations already have tools like that, Slack, Teams, Skype, something like that. But they have various rates of adoption. So we're seeing those really kick up. If you don't have a tool like that, depending on your situation, it doesn't mean they're not available. I mean, Skype is free. Google Hangouts is free. You can, in Slack's a little more set up, but these things could be available to you if you're interested in setting them up.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to try new things in Slack, right? We set up, it's funny because I use, for those who know me, I do a lot of gaming. I use what I love about Discord, which I wouldn't say is for work, but I like it a lot, is that you can create multiple different rooms to have conversations in. That's something you can do in Slack as well, right? You can have a project status chat, where the only thing you do is put project status and the discussions are about project status. You can have a chat that just says, stave off the insanity memes, and it's just memes and GIFs, right? So you can also look at sorting your conversations so that there's a place where you can stay focused and there's a place where you can go and be silly. So that's another way to look at organizing online communication. People who use Discord really do that in depth. Like there will be in one Discord, there'll be like, this is for memes. This is for, crap posts. This is for talking about this particular game. This is for a different game. This is for photos of your work from home setup. Like there are ways to break that all up.
Yeah, I like that idea of drawing that border, compartmentalizing it, and we do that too. Is we've got a channel, I think it's the standard channel at random, where it's just that it's that stuff. But then we've got other channels where we're focusing on specific client issues and things like that, so we can keep the conversation focused. And when you're like, okay, what's funny over here, you can do that and go back into work after that.
Yeah.
So another category of tool is, which I think we all are getting more and more familiar with, is video conferencing, Zoom, your WebEx, Meet Me, and all those things. And I think everybody's probably gotten a lot more use out of it. If you're a Zoom user, I know that I've noticed that the time it takes to process a recording went from a few minutes, maybe an hour, to days. And it's just because it's getting full up, it's catching up now. But it's really cool to see Zoom kick off. And by the way, if you don't have access to a conference platform, you might have looked at the cost for setting up WebEx or something like this, and they're really expensive. Not a paid advertisement, but Zoom, and I don't know if they're still doing this, but forever, you could sign up and have free Zoom conferences that were up to 45 minutes in duration. And it's a great service.
Yeah. I see David's asking in the chat, like, what if you don't have an IM tool? And I think this is the time to push your leadership to look at an IM tool. There are, you can set up a Discord or a Slack group for your team to stay together. If you want to keep security things in mind, if you want to keep security things in mind, agree as a team that you're not going to post sensitive documents there, right? Just chatting about, did you get the minutes? Are you ready to go for the next call? What do you think about, like, those are conversations that in general don't have nearly as much risk if they leave your internal company bounds. And you can also access manage that, right? So those are things to consider for folks who don't have that. If you are limited to something where you can only reply in the comments on documents, see if that works for you. Try that out. Tell other people to give it a try. In previous episodes, I know I've covered in some form of communication, if somebody isn't getting back to you or doesn't want to think through this, say, will you try it? What if we tried this? And just see if you can get that engagement going on it. Because it's the time to try new things. There's no reason to say, well, that's not how it works. This is not how life works. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and it can be so effective and when you're working from home. As I mentioned earlier, our organization, the Kolme Group, we're completely virtual. And we work really, it's one of the tightest teams I've ever worked with. And most of our interaction is actually through Slack. And we just really keep in touch. We keep ourselves accountable and each other accountable. And it's a great interface.
Yeah.
So one other thing we want to talk about on the topic of video conferencing is if you've got Zoom or WebEx, whatever, most organizations are used to going cameras off. I think, and we always try to encourage cameras on. And so this is a great opportunity to say, everybody at the beginning of the meeting, just encourage everybody to go cameras on, because it really increases the, engagement.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I've met so much more of my coworkers' family during this time. My wife is at home. She occasionally walks through the kitchen here, and the folks who know her at my office will say, hi, Kyle, because they're so excited to see her, right? We're not really seeing many people right now, especially if you are on full lockdown. So there is a nice thing that can happen from that. So I wouldn't fear, we're all human. I wouldn't fear, some of those things popping up in the future. If we want to go back to being really professional, I'm available for it, but not right now.
Yeah. And as pointed out in our chat, Angela, oh, hey, Angela, some organizations are requesting cameras off specifically due to bandwidth issues. And yeah, it does eat up a bunch of bandwidth. So that's something to think about. But whenever it's possible, it really does add a nice dimension to the discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. And to keep that social element, I would share like selfies of what you're going on, of what you have going on. Gifts definitely, but I would also add in some selfies, right? Like, this is what my desk's like today. Although what I'm doing on LinkedIn is posting food and then saying, bring a lesbian to work. So like
I see those.
If you want what I'm eating for the day, check out my LinkedIn.
All right. And then, of course, doc sharing. I think we had that as a point here to talk about. Dropbox, SharePoint. I mean, that's already there. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about productivity tools.
I like productivity. I'm a nerd on productivity tools.
Yeah. You want to start then?
Yeah, I would love to. So, hey, if you're not already using a productivity tool to manage your team, this might be an interesting time to check it out. So, look into something. There are free options out there like Asana and Trello, ASANA and Trello, Trello, if you're not familiar. They're free. They're super intuitive. It doesn't take anything for anybody to pick it up really quickly. And it's a great way to keep your team focused on tasks that need to be done to keep everybody aligned. So you can have your kind of a quick morning checkpoint with the team. You can screen share your Trello board or your Asana board and say, hey, here we go. Here's what we're doing, and just keep everything on track, make it easy to see what's going on. So if you're not already doing something like that, this is a great time to start implementing something like that. It's quick and easy. It's free. If you spend a half an hour trying to figure it out and set up your boards, you're probably good to go after that.
Yeah, I see some other things coming through the chat. Mural is great for collaboration in real time. MS Planner, I'm certain that's Microsoft Planner. I have not used that. Monday.com, I have seen ads for that because I do this. So they target me as a project manager. So yeah, there are all kinds of productivity tools. You just have to figure out what works for you. I want to have a shout out to Habitica, which is much more of a personal task management tool. Habitica is a way to give yourself tasks to do and gamify rewards. Because here I am being a nerd doing the game thing. But Habitica is a way to say like, oh, I have daily things I need to do every day. And then here's tasks I'm giving myself to do today. You can mark them easy, medium, or hard. You can get experience points for doing that. Then you can buy stuff, buy virtual currency, whatever the in-game currency is, buy stronger weapons and upload your person. Your party can go fight monsters. It's a cute way to hold yourself accountable. It might not be great for like your work team together, especially culturally, but if you have a group of people together, you can create a little party and you can go on adventures by doing the tasks that you do every day. That was really helpful for me whenever I needed something to help me focus.
That's Habitica?
Habitica, it's really cute.
I want to check that out. That sounds like fun.
Oh, be a little party. It'll be fun.
Cool.
The biggest thing that I am using right now, though, is the shared RAID log. Again, yes. Going low tech, right? We're just, it is a time of change. It's a lot to do, a lot of new things. A shared RAID log, putting that up during your meetings, sharing it afterwards, especially if it's in like a SharePoint where you can all edit it together, or if you use Google Docs and it's a shared document that you have in your Google Docs, it's a sheet. A shared RAID log is huge. You don't need anything more complicated than that if you're not sure where to start. We have our RAID log template on pmhappyhour.com/RAID log. So you can get a copy of that there. Share it during meetings, listen to our episode on RAID log, easy way to manage and keep people engaged. Everything we've said before applies.
Yeah, and kind of picking up on the concept of screen sharing, that's really good. So if you just get people on the phone and you're kind of talking through things, that can be good. But that shared experience and having everybody's eyes on the same thing, whether it's an Asana board or Habitica or your shared RAID log, that can be a really good exercise to do together. Honestly, it's probably pretty good practice too to do that.
Yeah, I also see somebody shouting out OneNote in the chat. I'm here to say go OneNote. I tragically have not found that it shares very well. So for me personally, OneNote's amazing, but I haven't gotten it to work right. This could be a my company thing, not a you thing. Not you, it's not you, it's me, OneNote. But that's what I see. So, but OneNote is also amazing.
All right. And, a lot of organizations also have good PPM tools, and this is my nerdy coming out. So you have to have patience with me there, Kate.
I'm ready.
Or we see organizations that have really good PPM tools. We work a lot with Clarizen. It's our weapon of choice. They've got a kind of it's like an Asana, it's a board Kanban, it's an agile tool and the PPM tool. And it's really cool to see those guys kind of not miss a beat when because they were used to working remotely. They're so engaged because it's got inbuilt collaboration. So if you've got a tool like that, try to fire it up and try to get it going. It's probably a little too late to get one on if you don't have one now. But if you've got the tools in your organization, go in and jump in, because like I said, the ones I've seen that have well-adopted tools in the space just really haven't missed a beat and are able to keep executing, keep collaborating, and keep things moving ahead.
Totally. A few other tools that we see coming in through chat. Smartsheet. Yeah, Smartsheet is like if Microsoft Project and Excel had a baby. So it's like less complicated than Project, but more complicated than Excel. It allows for nesting much easier of tasks and sort of dynamically creates the Gantt view in terms of your schedule. So Smartsheet, also an easy collaboration tool to use for planning. I also see Todoist with a Rocketbook integration. Kelly, you are far ahead of me. I don't know what any of that means. That was Greek, but Todoist and Rocketbook's another thing to check out. So yeah, all kinds of stuff.
I see votes for Claire's and Go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Claire's and Go as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's a cool question from Diane. Thanks for posting this. What approaches has anyone taken to try and get stubborn folks to keep their calendar up to date and to accept or decline meetings?
Oh man, I just call people out, but I do it in this way. Hey, through various channels of either Slack or IM, are you able to attend the 2 p.m. planning session today? And they'll say yes, no, maybe, whatever they say. I'm say, oh, okay, well, I didn't get a response from you, so I wasn't sure. Would you mind updating the invite? And if it's like, I would try that a few times, and then I might just ask like, hey, I've noticed that you don't ever respond to invites. Why is that? And just try to have some genuine curiosity about what's going on for them. Maybe they're constantly triple booked. Maybe they're just one of those people that just doesn't respond, and that's just how they are. And if you learn that that's just how they are, then I would communicate to them, because they may be like, no meeting is ever worth my time. Actually, I am a genius who's needed everywhere always. And so what you need to tell that person is how important they are going to be to that meeting. So it could be something like, oh, I hope to see you at the 2 p.m. planning session today. We are going to cover this part of the architecture, this relationship with procurement, this new contract, whatever. And we really are looking for your feedback on this. And you may even need to be specific with that feedback. Something like, we are looking for your approval. We want to make sure that this agreement we're negotiating meets our 3-year vision, right? If the more specific you can be with them, the more engagement I tend to see.
Nice. Related to calendaring, if you are somebody, and this is maybe a specific use case, but if you have multiple calendars and you always have a hard time scheduling between them or working with people, so I've got maybe a client calendar and I've got my calendar or something like this, if I've got this, kind of in their systems. But if you've got multiple calendars and you have a bit of a challenge, or if you just want to make it easy for just people to schedule time with you instead of having them send you an email that says, well, what time are you available? What time am I available? There's a really cool service that I use. There's a free version, but there's also a paid version with some additional features. It's called Calendly, CALENDLY.com. And what it is it gives you your own homepage, and that's integrated into your calendar. And so you just say, somebody says, well, I want to schedule a meeting with you. And you say, okay, well, here's my link. Go there and pick whatever time works for you. And you can set 30-minute, 60-minute, 90-minute blocks. And they go and there's got a nice UI, and you say, well, I want a meeting on this day. Boom, they click it, and it instantly books the meeting on your calendar, sends them a calendar invitation. And if you're a Zoom user, it can schedule the Zoom as well. So it's a really, really cool tool for managing calendars. Not exactly the same question that came up, but
yeah,
tangentially kind of cool.
The other thing I'll say is if for some reason you can't see free busy across several people, another way to handle that is through Doodle. I use Doodle to schedule, guys, take a guess. Is it a gaming thing? It is. I use Doodle to schedule my gaming sessions. And Doodle will let you pick blocks of time, and then folks will go and vote. This block works for me. This block doesn't work for me, and they'll go through, and then it'll come out with a clear winner that it recommends in terms of several folks.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. I like Doodle a lot, and also has a free version and a paid version.
All right. Sweet. Should we talk about engagement?
Oh yeah, let's talk about engagement. Not everybody gets to be in a webinar with Kate and Kim with this level of excitement. So yeah, let's talk about some specific techniques we can use to keep engaged with our team while our team members are not used to working from home. What am I going to start with? I'm going to start with empathy. This is a disruption to the way that we've normally worked. So again, just repeating this real quick here, just be patient, right? Somebody might need to put down the baby that they just got to calm down after an hour of screaming, and they may need to be 5 minutes late because they finally got that kid to shut up. And so just have some patience as you work through this, and just ask for folks to communicate. You can over communicate what you're working through. So if you can model over communicating behavior, that's something that's not urgent, right? Like maybe you have a Slack channel with updates. Maybe you do a daily summary at the end of the day, something that lets you just say like, hey, here's what's going on, just so everybody knows, to keep people in the loop.
Yeah. And absolutely. I think just everybody chill is a good philosophy to have right now. You know, another, I guess, another tactical way to help with team engagement is take a page from the Agile playbook. And if you're not already, do a daily stand-up, or maybe every other day, but it can be nice to have just that 15-minute daily stand-up. If you're not familiar with the rules around a daily stand-up, it doesn't matter, you make your own. But basically let's get together every day, let's time box it, and just spend, just a few minutes just saying, hey, how's everybody doing? Everybody got any roadblocks? Let's just go around. What are you working on? What'd you get done? What are you doing next? Do you have any hangups right now that you need help with? And that kind of daily stand-up can help keep everybody on track and focused. And it helps make sure everybody checks into your office. It's kind of a sanity check too. It's a good morale booster and a team building thing. And they are really supposed to be traditionally very focused, in and out. But it might also be good to just have a little small talk at the beginning. Hey, how you guys doing? What are you up to? How's your toilet paper supply? Things like that. Just to have just to keep the good humor before you jump in and start talking business.
Totally. Something that I have done with my coworkers, with folks that I don't work with all the time, is I am setting up little coffees, little virtual coffees that we can have together. I had one of my first ones yesterday with somebody, and he was like, this is so helpful. He's single in a studio apartment. You have to and he's in New York. You have to imagine how tough that is, right? Like, that's not a lot of interaction. He doesn't have any pets, right? So, or children, right? So, doesn't have anything to like break up that monotony. So like, do consider, if you are working with somebody, that you might be what's breaking up their monotony. So those people will also need time to let their brain be like, hello, I'm social, how are you? Right? So I think that letting that check-in time happen is really key. The other thing I would encourage you to try is to have a virtual happy hour. I did that with an affinity group at work. All of the gays met up at a little virtual happy hour, and it was really awesome, just to like chit chat, hang out. I would limit it to around 10 people, because any more than that, you can't actually do the in-person thing where you separate into groups. So just setting up some virtual spaces to talk can be really helpful for those extroverts there. The other thing I'll say, I see Drew talking about introverts. There are introverts that just like to be part of things and don't want to have to be the person performing. So they're also happy to just hang out on that call and be happy to be there, but not have to have the pressure of like doing all the talking or anything like that. So this is also a great way to spend time with people who are introverts. If you're an extrovert who needs to just and they'll be like, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I like Joanna's comment in the chat that they started a virtual happy hour and they've got better attendance than their real world happy hours.
Yeah. I mean, our attendance today, I don't know how many people are here because I don't have this admin view. Thank you all so much for coming, but I far exceeded expectations.
Yeah. Pamela had a cool question. She says, how are teams taking breaks? How are you taking breaks with your teams? Are you doing online games or something like that you can do together?
Yeah, I've gotten this question before. I should just come up with a list of what I recommend, because I've gotten it a few times now. There is a stupid, silly, easy web browser game. I'll get the link. I think it's agar.io, where you play as a little cell and you eat other cells, and your goal is to be the biggest cell on the board. It's very easy. Anybody can play it. It requires almost no skill. You all get eaten eventually, because there's clearly people who play this for fun all the time. And there is a way to invite your coworkers into that group, and all play the same thing. But Jackbox games are also really great. You could see if now is the time to learn if anybody who works with you is a gamer. I would guess at least one of them is. See if they would feel comfortable facilitating a Jackbox game session. But I'll come up with a list of stuff and share that, because I've gotten it enough times that it just needs to be out there.
Cool. Yeah, let's share that. We'll get that out with our link or attach it somehow. We'll put it in the show notes for the podcast, and wherever the webinar is posted, we'll try to find some place to stick some notes in there.
Yeah.
A couple of things. We're still talking about team engagement, but it might be good to set some workday expectations if it's appropriate. For example, if even though we're working remotely, and it's nice to have a little schedule flexibility, and I think that's going to be part of this. But sometimes it can be frustrating if you're trying to get something done and you're trying to get a hold of somebody and they're a night owl. And so their schedule starts to shift from a 9 a.m. start to a 10 a.m. start to an 11 a.m. start to a 12 noon start. That can be kind of frustrating for the team. So it's kind of nice if you need to set just some workday expectations. Say, look, I know we're working from home. It's cool if you need to step out for a little bit, but generally we want to have you generally available between these hours. That can head off some potential issues when working with a team, especially if they're not used to the dynamics of working remotely.
Yeah. I actually see somebody asking about, hi Nishit, asking about micromanagement, right? Is some, what's going on if some people are micromanaging? I think having that conversation about workday expectations is the right place to take that. If you feel like you're being micromanaged, try to have a conversation with your manager about what they're expecting to see. Expecting to see you online 24/7 is not realistic. Does your manager expect you to be at your desk 24/7? Are you not allowed to take bathroom breaks? Do you not go to get lunch? You can't have the conversation with that tone with your manager, but like, I'm saying this on your behalf, like, it's unrealistic, right? So, and if they say like, yes, that's what I expect, gently work through setting a boundary with them around what's realistic to expect. Like, well, I'm working through this deliverable. I know I can get this done and over to you by 5 p.m. Would that make you feel more confident? And if they say yes, and then bother you all day, say, hey, I see that, we agreed on a deadline and we're coming back to revisit it. Is there something I don't know about this deadline that you'd like me to address? Do you need something? What's going on? Try to find out more about where they're coming from, but set those strong boundaries. And if they want, and your next step would be like, hey, what's going on? Is it done yet? You say, you'll have an update at 5 p.m. Hey, what's going on? Is it done yet? You'll have an update at 5 p.m. Hey, what's going on? Has anything changed? And you say, you'll have an update at 5 p.m. Just like keep it, right? It's like dog training. You do the same thing every time until they figure out they're not going to talk to you.
I think for a lot of people, and I'll say this about myself, it's also a self-exercise there too, because you're remote and you might start thinking, well, I know they're online. Why aren't they answering my message? Take a breath and don't be that project manager.
Yeah. We strive to be the project managers that create realistic expectations for teams, who are providing clear direction, right? Who know how to get people to check in with them. It's definitely a dance to learn it. And they may, even if you're doing a great job, they may think you're a micromanager, but do your best to work through it.
Yeah. Yes. And speaking of being away from your desk, we were going to cover this earlier, but we forgot. So something that can really help you from an ergonomic perspective is get a good set of headphones with a mic. And if you can swing Bluetooth, it's great to not be tied to your desk all day. But quick tip, if you are on Bluetooth headphones, remember to mute if you have to take a break during a conference call.
Yeah.
You don't want to flush and then have somebody say, what was that sound? Like, you don't want to be that. You want to be that one.
Yeah. I have a
Anything
question.
else on this? I think we're pretty much done. Anything else on team engagement?
Did you have something with gamification from Corey?
Oh, yes, of course I did. I mentioned that earlier a little bit about Corey, who had to change her face-to-face class into an online class. And so so the lesson we want to take from that is that now that we're more virtual, we really want to stop and think about meeting engagement and really be deliberate about this. Really, camera keeps us honest, it keeps us focused, but also keep yourself focused as there are a lot of distractions. Really keep yourself engaged and work on ways to engage your participants on your calls or your video conferencing. Don't do death by PowerPoint. Don't just talk the whole time. Really work on honest engagement with your team members that are on your conference calls. Ask questions, drive discussion. Sometimes we can forget about this stuff and think it's less important than getting through our agenda, but it's really important to just step back and think, how am I going to engage the participants of this phone call that I'm going to go into.
Yeah, I do want to take a second because I'm seeing that folks have to jump because they
Yes.
are great project managers who plan their time well, and Kim and I are feeling you all. We deserve crucifixion. So we want to thank everybody so much for spending your time with us. The rest of this will be recorded because we'll go into some more things on etiquette and whatnot. So thank you so much for your time. If you dropped a question in there, we can go back to it during the Q&A, which we'll go through here. I know that we have our amazing facilitators helping us with that. So thank you so much for spending time with us. Did anything we want to leave them with, Kim?
We are going to keep going though, right? So
We
if
are
you've
going
got
to
to
keep
go,
going.
totally cool. So glad that you joined us, but we are going to keep on. So if you do have a little extra time, you want to hang out, we'd love to have you on. And if you can't, like Kate says, we're going to have the recording. So you're not going to miss anything. It's okay.
Yeah, you won't miss it, but we do want to say goodbye to the people who have to go because you're being a good project manager and you're doing it good.
You are. We're going to be bad examples right now.
Yeah. Well, if we had rehearsed this, but we came together quickly.
I know. We were being agile and we pivoted.
Yeah. So,
see, I used 2 keywords there. I used 2 cool words there.
Yeah. For how much extra time? I think to finish our content and do any extra Q&A we didn't cover, I would plan on an extra 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think we'll be done in 30 more minutes. So
totally
fast. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So that covers all the meeting stuff. You want to talk about etiquette?
Oh, yes. Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Something I do want to touch on for prepping for your meetings. This is a change. Lauren's singing back to me. If you're planning for your online virtual meetings, it can be very effective to take, I'm going to go with 6 whole minutes to plan your meeting, right? What you want to get out of it, get yourself in the mental space, think through who your attendees are going to be, any things that are going to come up from them that you want to make sure you're mentally ready to respond to, and just take some time to get ready. And you can do that while you're taking the dog out, you're putting on a show or a game for your kids, right? Even in like a small lap around the house between like a bathroom break, like stopping out on the patio or looking out a window so that you're standing and then you're ready to go to your meeting.
Throw a handful of goldfish at the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, speaking of conference calls, plan for and expect typical technical bumps at the beginning of meetings and be patient, especially if this stuff is new for you or your team. There's that, can you hear me? I can't hear you. I can't get my video going. So just expect and plan for that. Know that that's probably going to happen. And as people kind of are struggling with technology, maybe they just need a little extra time to get set up. So just maybe plan for that or expect it in your agendas.
Yep. As we've said several times, cameras on, always helpful, right? We did talk through some of those constraints today, but if you're able to do so, cameras on is huge.
Yeah.
And if you can't, and you can have like a profile picture show up instead, and then you like change that profile picture every day of like a cute dumb selfie, that's also a good idea.
That's cool. That's cool. Also, we talked a little bit about this too, but give yourself a little time for engagement, especially if your team is new to working remotely. Ask, how's it going? And so you can share the experience and do a little team building as part of the process as well.
Yeah. And I think we've touched on a lot of these things. Another thing I would do is not just check in on how it's going in the beginning of the call, right? Like everything we've talked about with meetings before still applies, right? If there's 6 people on the call and 4 people are talking, a great way to get somebody's engagement is to prime them. And you would do that by saying, Kim, I know we haven't heard from you. So Kim, person's name. 2nd, make up an excuse for them. 3rd, remind them what you were talking about, which is, Kim, haven't heard from you in a bit. I'm sure you're busy. Really curious about, we're discussing how we're going to handle this particular design change in the document. We were thinking we should, go from red to green or whatever the conversation is. What are your thoughts on that? Right? So we have made Kim not look dumb because he wasn't listening.
I'm sorry,
right?
what?
Yeah, right. We're trying to avoid, I'm sorry, what? So you're saying, Kim, hey, Kim, do you have a second? I wanted to go through, right? So you're trying to get them engaged into the meeting and make them look good as part of it. That can also reduce any like embarrassing or frustrating or like, oh, it's so hard responses, right? By being like, hey, just wanted to see what you thought about that. But also just checking in like, hey, does this make sense? Do we feel like this is being effective? That can also be important.
Yeah. I like Drew's comment there. Thanks.
I know, I'm
Thanks,
giggling
Drew.
at Drew saying made Kim not look dumb. That's an accomplishment.
Diane, though, asked a really interesting question. There's a lot of questions here, and I'm sorry I'm going to miss some because they're just going so fast, but Diane's really jumped out at me, is do we have any techniques to help people not talk over others accidentally?
I would model, be the change you want to see. Is you as the facilitator, keep track of who wanted to talk, right? If there's 6 people on the call and there's, the thing we're struggling with, right, is we don't have the physical in-person cues to be able to read who wants to talk. So if you as the facilitator can keep track of like, Drew's tried to join this conversation 5 times because I keep seeing Drew's like face or avatar pop up, and then Kim talks more over Drew, and then, now it's time for Corey to talk, and then Drew pops in for a second, then backs out and waits, right? Like everybody can talk, and then you say, hey, I think Drew wanted to add this conversation. Drew, what were your thoughts, right? You can use that as an opportunity. And the other thing I would say too is you can leverage chat as well to make sure that you're capturing all the things you need to, right? Some folks just don't want to deal with the competitiveness of people talking over each other. So you can also say, yeah, if you have anything you want to add, like we're having a lot of discussion on this, like feel free to put it in the note in the chat, and we can make sure that's captured as a requirement, as a design consideration, whatever it is you need to say.
Yes. What else do we have here?
Yeah.
Mute by default is a good one. When everybody gets on, you can say, okay, everybody, as we get started, please mute yourself, and then we'll do that because there's going to be background noise. In fact, I can hear my daughter starting to play the piano. I don't know if you guys can hear that. That was a boundary I talked about before. I said, Pappy's got a conference call. Can you not play for a little bit? And
yeah, she's like, it's 12. You're supposed to be done.
It's 12. You're done.
Yeah. Somebody asked about icebreakers. I think icebreakers are really important now. On my virtual happy hour that I did the other day, we just talked about, everybody talked about what they're drinking, right? Various things that they have. We shared what new things we're trying, right? I have time actually to bake bread. I can let bread proof for 4 hours because now I have the time to be home and like do everything it needs to have happen. So I've baked hamburger buns the other day. I also have made cupcakes. I'm going to come out of this a carbo-loaded human being. But so I would ask things like, what's everybody's, new thing that they're trying in this time? I think that parents tend to just need a safe space to be like, parents of especially young kids just seem frazzled all the time right now. So I just give them space to be like, oh, that sounds so hard. But it seems like it's better than yesterday, right? Some people just want to be miserable, and it's also okay to be like, that sounds hard. And then to go like, yeah, like that's another option as well.
My youngest daughter loves to bake. I think I've gained 5 pounds this week. She's home from school and she's just brownies and cinnamon rolls. I'm like, oh no, give me those.
Oh, another thing I saw this week, somebody did, who can have the most distracting background? And somebody showed up in like an inner tube that's a dragon. So his screen looked absurd, and you couldn't not look at him whenever he showed up. So like just silly little things to just check in on how it's going. Ask about people's kids, ask about hobbies, figure out, is that your cat? What's its name? Yeah, ask about their pets. Another thing we're doing is we're sharing a lot of food. Like I already talked about baking, but I mentioned to somebody I'm going to make pickled lemons. And she was like, oh, there's a lemon pickle recipe that the folks on this call from India would know about. And I was like, send me your lemon pickle recipe. I want to try the new thing. And she made a joke about also having to send me the spices because I'm sure I won't have them, but who knows? So I think it's just important to try things out, just learn about people, take a genuine interest in them.
Yes. A couple more things on call etiquette. So a really useful tip is that when you are on a conference call, especially if there are a number of people, When you're asking a question or directing a comment, call them by name, because not everybody knows everybody's name and you can't tell who they're looking at. So it can be really help the conversation flow better and be more effective if you are careful to talk to people by name or call them by name. Can be very useful.
Yeah. And if you don't have video and you're on audio, never be afraid to say, this is Kate, wanted to chime in on XYZ, right? Introduce yourself just so folks get to really know your voice. Although I think we'll all know our voices very well by the end of this.
That's very, very true. Also, be careful of multitasking. You're on these calls now. It can be really easy to get distracted by doing other things, doing Facebook, whatever you do. But just be careful of that. Try to stay focused when you can. I've actually got a customer where we have a number of calls where they just want us on standby. So they want us to sit in, but we don't have to be active participants. And so, I don't want to just sit there and listen and do nothing for an hour. So I have the conversation at the time. I said, all right, is it okay if I multitask on this call? And you can just shout out my name when you need me to get my attention, and I can do it. And we have that agreement on those calls. I'll sit in and listen on those. If I go ahead and multitask, and they'll say, hey, hey, Kim, are you there? And I say, oh yeah, I'm here. Okay. And I'll put down what I'm doing. And it's really effective for them and for me. The key there is just have that agreement ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're not feeling engaged by the speaker, you can always gently prompt them and say, hey, just wanted to check in. What outcome or deliverable are you driving to get at the end of this call? Right? Just ask them what outcome or deliverable are you trying to drive by the end of this call? That can be really helpful to understand how much you need to be there.
All right. Anything else on conference call etiquette?
Oh man, Drew's giving us a gentle lesson on be cognizant of your team's level of humor, and if they're not ready to share memes on the coronavirus, right? Like if they're really feeling a lot of panic, don't push that too hard. For right now, I think the things that are kind of universal are feeling a little stir crazy, and also feeling very grateful that many of us are professionals who have the ability to work from home, that we don't have to go and do a job that puts us at risk every day. So we are in a really privileged position that I am also very grateful to do. And I think that sometimes you'll need to have that balance to what's going on, right? Like if all else fails, like you can't be mad at somebody who's grateful for being, for their health and for the ability to continue doing their job.
Yeah. All right. Should we talk about sanity?
It's time to talk about sanity.
So even if you do all these awesome things and listen to the great advice that we and everybody else on the internet has, it can be tough to keep sane when working at home long term, especially if you're not used to it. So let's talk about a couple of things that you can do to keep yourself together. So I'll say number one for me, which I am able to do most of the time, and when I start to slip, I can certainly tell, and I have to get back to it, is set a schedule for yourself for when you start and end work. I hear a lot of talk right now about keeping your rituals, and that's good too. And really, the key to that is make sure you've got a schedule. This is when I want to get into the office. This is when I'm done, and I shut the door or put off my headphones or whatever I do to close that virtual door to say, this is when I start. This is when I end, to help keep yourself on track.
Yeah, I really think that a type of mental load that not a lot of folks consider about working from home is that it's such a different type of mental load, because I think what we do, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm at the office and I don't know, I have nothing to do right now, or I don't want to do that thing, so I'll go get some coffee. But at home, it can feel like I can't go get coffee. I got to sit here. What if an IM comes in? I can't move. Here I am. This is my life now. And so I've been like that for sure, especially whenever you are the only remote worker and everybody else is online. You never want to give the impression you're not working. So do take that into consideration, right? Like have empathy for other folks who could be feeling like that. Reassure them that you believe that they're getting their work done. And for yourself, right? That's why we're saying this start and end is so important, so that you don't sit there and be like, well, it's important I look like I'm working all the time because we're working from home. Right? You set that boundary so that you're able to say, I'm here, I'm gone.
Yes. And another tip is be patient with your team members that have bad connectivity, because not everybody has great super powerful internet available to them. Consider using audio. And we call this out because it is absolutely infuriating when you're trying to have a conversation or you or the other person keeps cutting out. And really just kind of take a step back. Don't let it drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And just be patient.
Yeah. Make sure you stand up and move around, you know, and take the time that you need. Actually yesterday I was in a meeting and I was having a particularly bad mental health day, and I went to close something I was working on and rejoined the meeting, or it was dumb. And I closed the meeting and I went, I think I'm not necessary for this meeting. I'm just gonna take this as a sign. I'm going to go on a walk around my complex. I'll be back later today. So be kind to yourself if you realize that's what you need. We are dealing with more stressors than just working from home. So realize that as well.
Absolutely. I see Lauren likes her lunchtime yoga breaks. That's
good. That's good.
That's a good thing. Let's talk about other productivity tips, and everybody who's still able to hang on with us. Thank you for hanging on a little bit longer with us. Let's all kind of share with the whole group. Please tag all attendees and panelists. What are your productivity tips for staying focused and getting stuff done from home? In fact, I'll share one of mine. When I have to be heads down and I'm doing, something where I'm writing a document or I'm doing something, for me, music really helps me get through it. I put my headphones on, it isolates me, and I turn something on, and it just keeps me focused. Especially when I realize I start to feel, especially in the afternoon, I feel an afternoon sag. I'm like, oh, I'm not really feeling focused. I really don't know what to do. I put that on and it just kind of sets me back up, gets me a little bit more energy to really kind of focus. What about you?
What music do you put on? This is a key part of this question.
Oh, yes. Actually, I assault my team members with it. Every Thursday morning, in our Slack channel, we have random. And every Thursday morning, we were doing a lot of coding, I think in December or January, November. I don't even know when it started, but to get myself going, it was Thursday morning. I started Thursday Pump. And so every Thursday morning, I would post a link to a song. And I don't even know what genre it is. I can post a couple of them. It's kind of a Southern modern rock kind of thing. I don't even know.
I like that.
I don't even know what the genre is, but.
Yeah. I can't listen to music with lyrics because my brain goes, what do they sing? Could you sing with them? You should not do your work and you should sing the song instead. So I have to do lyricless music, which tends to be really epic music, right? Like this is the music when, Thanos is coming down and all hope is lost.
Yeah. So
right?
That's the kind of stuff. Yeah. What I do is I put mine on the loop. I'll have one song and I'll put it on the loop and I'll leave it on the loop for about 3 hours. And it sounds crazy, but it just, after a while, I don't even hear it. And it just kind of keeps me focused. I don't know, it's kind of weird, but I have a good song. I just let it go and just loop it. And then, of course, after 3 hours, I don't want to hear that song again for a month, but it's almost trance-like. It gets me focused. So let's hear some of these.
Yeah, I see Heather uses a Pomodoro timer, which I've also used. The Pomodoro method is that you work for 25 minutes and then you have a 5-minute break. And it's amazing because humans can't really sit there and do one thing for forever. And I used a timer that would also get rid of I used a browser extension that would get rid of distracting links. So I'm working, I'm focused for 25 minutes. Every time my brain is like, go to Reddit, I can't. And then during my 5-minute break, it would open up all of my distracting links like Reddit and Facebook or whatever else I want to be on. +1 for the Pomodoro.
I like Kayla's tip here. Take breaks, but make sure they're boring. If you start watching YouTube, you never come back to work. Standing up to do some stretches or doing dishes gives you a break from all this, in your body, a little bit of a break without getting pulled off track. That's a great tip, Kayla.
Yeah. I think Drew talked about coffee, but there's something really wonderful about taking a break to make something, right? If you feel like you're not getting anything done at work because you don't have a physical deliverable, maybe you just came out of a meeting and all you did was the action items, or maybe you had a meeting that didn't go well, right? You can re-ground yourself and feel productive again by going through the really sensory, interesting habit of making a cup of coffee, right? That's a really wonderful thing to spend, 5 minutes on as a break to help reboot you into feeling productive again.
It does. Plus coffee.
Yeah, eureka moments of waking coffee. Agreed. Yeah. Kelly's talking about putting in a load of laundry. Yes. I have seen some people say, don't do household chores while you're at work. And to that, I say, screw that advice. I disagree. Yeah, like one of the extreme luxuries of being at home is that it can make your off work hours much more luxurious. You can bake bread, which will take 5 minutes to let it mix and then 2 hours to do nothing with. You can put your laundry in the washer. Like definitely do the chores. Mindless chores can feel really nice.
Corey says you should go for a walk and listen to PM Happy Hour.
We'll have to come out with more episodes to keep up with that level of demand.
Well, we got a whole backlog there of
It's
pre-recorded ones to keep people busy until we get some more ones out. All right.
Is it Q&A time? Do we have any Q's and A's?
Q&A time. Do we want to do a couple you might be in trouble if? We got to do that. We have to do that every time.
I don't know. I think we should give them Q's and A's so we can
All right, let's do
time.
it. Q&A. Open Q&A. All right, Lauren, I'm going to ask you how we're going to do this since you're our webinar master.
Hey, absolutely. Thank you. So the best way to do this is if you have a question, you should be able to see on your right-hand side where you can raise your hand. So it's an actual tool that you can use and click, and it should raise that up. If you're not seeing that, you can chat in. Awesome. So I see someone raise their hand, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute them and allow them to speak.
Remember, you got to say your name.
Yeah.
Yep, and they'll say their name. So if anybody has a question, go ahead and raise your hand and we can get you with the hosts. Awesome, David. All right, David, I'm going to take you off mute. There you are.
Hey, guys.
Hey, David.
Hey, David.
How's it going?
Great.
Pretty well.
So I've got an interesting question. So what would you say the best way to deal with the current situation that everybody's going through? When an organization or let's just say a team that you're part of has deprioritized current projects and current workload to focus on business as usual and to ensure that the wheels keep on turning.
Yeah, that's big stuff. It is, right? And I think this is all unprecedented, right? That's the word everybody's using. We're in an unprecedented time. And I think the biggest thing that you can do, if you are available, because this does take work, is just to hold space for people to feel uncertainty, right? Like there are so many things we can't plan for. And to be able to say like, yeah, I feel that too. And I also am uncertain. And it's, I think we should just take it one day at a time, because that's truly all we can do right now.
Yeah.
But we can do that in a way that does not invalidate them by saying like, everything will be fine tomorrow. Like clearly that's not going to be the case, but what will happen tomorrow, we don't know. So it doesn't behoove us or even help to panic, but it does help us to say, yeah, it is uncertain. I am uncertain too. And this is a hard time. And I think that just those sentences can help.
Yeah. Okay.
And David, are you coming from a place where you're trying to get a project done, but now you don't have any people because they're all focused on operational stuff?
Yeah, that's that. Yeah. So there's a lot of sort of priority within the business and different teams about sort of focusing on the here and now. Priority of projects has almost taken a back seat at the moment. Naturally, which many businesses are doing across the world. But it's interesting because the way I like to think of it is that there's front of shop, which is providing support and helping out where you can to support colleagues, team members, and the business. But then there's also what I call as sort of below the radar work, where you can still try to work on project activity, but obviously not let that sort of impact the sort of the main business as usual work and what sort of contributes towards business activity.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to say too, in terms of like, when people are uncertain, we can focus on what we have control over, so we can focus on, it's good that we've shifted our resources, that we're supporting this front of line work, right? Because that is the most important thing right now. What's really great is it gives us time to, look at what we had planned and see how that would, adjust based off the future, right? Like there
Sure.
are some things that we can look at. Yeah. More personally, yesterday I did a panic list with my wife where we wrote out everything we're panicking about and we talked through what would happen if that happened. But that was a very personal exercise that we did. So it just depends on your level of closeness with your team and what you can talk through. But I think it's helpful to give the concrete things that you can do and how what you are doing, such as social distancing, relates to the overall making us successful through this unprecedented time.
Yeah, and if we jump way back to our Code Red episode, we talked about how if you're in a situation where, if you're project disaster or some other kind of problem in a project, but I think that translates easily to this, is right now there's a lot of uncertainty. So any certainty that you can introduce for your stakeholders can be really helpful, even if that certainty is only, we're going to talk again next Tuesday, I'll have an update for you. If I have an update, anything you can do to help try to communicate set expectations, but be predictable and keep some structure to that, instead of saying, well, I can't say anything about anything because we don't know what's going to happen. And
right.
It's true, you don't know what's going to happen, but if you can introduce some level of certainty, even about the uncertainty, as strange as that sounds, that can really help you and your team, and especially your stakeholders, keep a little bit of sanity.
Yeah, like offering a level of comfort, a comfort blanket almost for what's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, good question.
Great question, David. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. All right, so it looks like we have another question coming in from Pamela a little bit earlier in the call. So in general, she wanted to know, they're doing a bug bash, okay, and devs don't like to do that. So she's trying to make it fun. Is there anything you guys can suggest to virtually motivate the teams, right? Boiled down to what she sees as intent. So how do we motivate these teams if we're wanting to do like a bug bash for dev teams that aren't typically, they're not typically super excited about doing those. They're long, they're hard, they're frustrating. So how do you pump people up for that?
Yeah, I think my first thought is that you'd have to tie it to something maybe more concrete. Like they may be feeling like that doesn't matter right now. That's a way they could be feeling. They could be feeling like, I don't know how I'll be rewarded for this. So I don't know why I would help with it, right? It could be that you might need more executive sponsorship in order to make this sound, I hate this word, but I don't have a better one, sexier, right? Like, oh yeah, our CEO said, let's do a bug bash during this time. Everything that we can do contributes to X, Y, or Z, or you know what I mean? Like you might need to look at a way to put more executive sponsorship there so that it feels like more of an event as opposed to I've assigned you a bug. So I would think through, what you're trying to get out of it, what the reward is for them, who wants to see them successful, how they'll be rewarded for that success. Maybe there's something missing there.
Yeah,
I love that, an event.
I haven't done much of a bug bash myself. I kind of poked my head into one once, but I wonder if there's a way to gamify it a little bit to say who gets the most bugs gets a coffee mug or something like that, or gets fame and glory, or a free roll of toilet paper, or whatever the prize is.
I love it.
But I wonder if there's some way to get engagement that way by kind of making it more interactive, gamifying it a little bit.
Yeah. Kayla brings up a leaderboard, leaderboards and like a public leaderboards can be used to either like shame or showcase. And so a bug bash, or both, right? So like a bug bash leaderboard, a way that they can like make it competitive between several different team members, right? There might just not be enough things around the bug bash to make it feel like it's a real thing as opposed to kill some bugs. Boop.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Thanks so much, you guys.
All right, we're at 12:26-ish. Let's do one more question and let's wrap it up.
Awesome. Okay. So if we have another question available, we've answered those. You guys did a really good job of coming around, getting the answers to the questions as they became available. So I think we're actually in a really good place for questions. Does anybody else have another question? We'll give you just a few moments to pop in.
I like Kayla's comment. If you like this webinar, you can send tips to Kim in the form of a roll of toilet paper.
He'll be accepting those.
I will accept rolls of toilet paper, yes.
I love that. I love that. All
Yeah.
right. Looks like we have one final hand raised. Heather, I'm going to go ahead and take you off of mute.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I just have a quick question, and maybe this is more of a Kate question, since you have all the feels. So I'm a really direct communicator and relatively new to an organization, and my VP just left, so I've been kind of handed off. I've been dumped a bunch of projects with not a lot of handoff, I guess maybe I should say. I'm trying to do follow-up. This is the best time in my life to be doing follow-up with people I don't know and trying to really like get projects tied up and get contracts signed and all this. Anyway, I've got to be the bad guy a lot.
Ooh, okay.
And I'm really struggling with being nice without being saccharine. I don't want to be condescending. I don't want to be like, oh, so I hope you're well. But anyway, you haven't got me that stuff yet. So how can
I see you. I see you so much. Continue.
So I really want to be, I'm very genuine, but my genuine is very militaristic. And I'm like, so we got stuff to do, no feelings. We're just here to get the job done. But this is not going to work for a lot of people right now. I can hear it in all the calls. Everyone's very stressed out. And I come from emergency management. So I'm like, business as usual. This is fine.
Oh, yeah.
In the
Oh,
dog
man.
on fire sense of fine, that's just kind of, I maintain a fine. So
Yeah.
I want to be cognizant without condescending.
Yeah. Question. Do you remember a time before you were good at emergency management? That's a genuine question.
I have spent my entire adult life like that. So no, like
Okay.
in my grown-up sense. As a child, yes, but that's a frightening place. We don't need to go there.
Yeah. Well, you might, right? Like I know that's so extreme, but like I have so much empathy for where you're at, right? Like I'm just like, shut up, work, right? And we can't do that right now. Like that's just not going to work. There are people who are worried about so much stuff and work may not feel important. So I think what I would do if I were you is I would think about how would I want to talk to my wife about this, right? Because I love my wife more than anybody in the entire world. And she can be, if I came at her whenever she was stressed out and said, why isn't this done yet? She would melt down into a pile of tears. And I would feel very sad. So for me, that's a way I can think about, okay, I need to approach this and say, hey, I wanted to check in on how this task is going. What's going on there? Do you have an update? Do you have an update? Might be too much for people, right? So just like genuine curiosity, what's going on with this? How is this going? Interesting. I see that, right? And you want to avoid sentences that are like, why didn't you do this? And you need to focus sentences around like, I see that the date that it was due on is 2/28. Oh gosh, this is so hard. But like that's the type of thinking you have to do. Yeah, but that's where you're at, right? Like you need, and like that person doesn't see the same urgency as you. So you need to talk to them with where they're at. If it wasn't a priority a month ago, then like, why not? So interesting. Tell me more. Oh, right. Like that's the approach that you have to take for those folks. But I see you so much. We could talk more about this in the future because it's a tough topic. Just try to be as curious as possible and remove as many questions as you can that would be something to the effect of, why isn't this done? Ask more around like, oh, what happened on the 28th? What kept you from being able to do this? Ooh, what got in the way of that? What happened here? Right? This is very like third person type questions that you're asking that can really take the burden off them.
Okay. No, that's awesome. I appreciate it. How can I help you help you?
Yeah, right. Like you have to roll yourself all the way. In the future, we'll do an episode about like when you're smarter than your audience and you need to bring them on that journey. Cause that's a big lesson I've been learning this year is, when you know the answer and they don't, you need to back way up. And so that's what you have to do. You got to go all the way back to whenever you were scared, and hearing why isn't it done would be really hard for you. So what could you have heard then? That's where you have to go.
That is genius, and I cannot wait for that episode. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Great question.
All right. Thanks, Heather. And we're going to wrap up now. So thanks everybody for coming. If you're not a PM Happy Hour listener, come check us out. It's a lot more of this, what you just had. You
Yeah.
can find us on PM Happy Hour. And if you join up as a member, you can get a one-on-one with us. We can just kind of talk offline. We also have monthly member-only chats, which they were on hold a little bit. We'll pick those up here this month.
We'll do double this month to make up for it. We'll do that.
We should do that. We'll double up maybe the next couple months just to make up for it.
Great.
It's probably highly needed.
Yeah.
So hope you got a lot out of today. We're going to be following up with everybody who attended is going to get an email. We're going to send a link to the recording and our thanks. Finally, big thanks to our sponsors, Kolme Group, Total PPM Nerds, a whole company full of them. So if you need to look more seriously at working remote kind of tools, that's what Kolme Group does. And you can find out more by checking them out, and we'll send this link to you as part of the follow-up in the email. So again, thanks a lot. Any final words, Kate?
I'm so glad you're all here. Thank you so much for spending time with us. I love you all. You are all amazing. The whole reason this is here is because you guys listen to us. Thanks for thinking we're great. We think you're great too.
I know. We wouldn't do this if we didn't have such a great time chatting.
Yeah,
with,
we hope this
our
is
listeners.
helpful. Yeah. So, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. So everybody, cheers.
Cheers.